Adverse drug reactions or drug side effects are a significant problem in modern healthcare. In fact, according to estimates, adverse drug reactions are the sixth leading cause of deaths worldwide. I'm your host Paras Mehta, and today on India to Germany, we speak with Dr. Priyanka Banerjee about her research in computational toxicology at Charité, one of Europe's leading university hospitals. Priyanka is a principal research investigator at Charité with several years of experience in the development and application of computational methods for analyzing risk associated with chemical compounds. She is also a lecturer at the Freie Universität Berlin in Germany. Welcome, Priyanka. Thank you for being on the podcast.
Thank you, Paras. I appreciate the kind introduction.
So, Priyanka, you have a lot of experience in the area of toxicology, and you're also doing research in the field at the moment. Could you tell us a little bit about what toxicology is all about?
So let me start with the literal, description of the field of research. So toxicology is the study of the adverse effects of chemical or physical or biological agents on our living system and the ecosystem around us, right? Including the prevention, the understanding, and also reduction of such adverse effect. So chemical in such like its impact on health is usually investigated by the concept of ADME, where it means a chemical is absorbed, distributed, metabolized, or eliminated in living system. So what does it mean in if I have to broaden the explanation, is that not all chemicals are impactful in the same ways. Sometimes they're metabolized. For example, maybe there is an issue because of the way our liver metabolizes the compound and converts it into an inert substance. Some chemicals have means to be excreted, and while others may not. And considering all aspect of how a chemical gets into the body, how they move within our body, and how they get out of the body can help us assess the toxicity of a chemical.
Okay, so it's all about chemicals and their impact on our body.
Yes, actually, very much of that, but it's not a very like a recent area of research. In fact, if I have to stretch back, it's like almost 500 years ago. Paracelsus was known as the father of toxicology. He acknowledged that the subtle distinction between whether a given chemical will act as a medicine or a poison is often, determine the dose and as well as the amount of time at which it is given. So, however, it is only by the 20th century, which is right now in the era of modern science, that Paracelsus' understanding of dose-dependent toxicity profiles of chemicals kind of manifested a new definition in terms of like system-level understanding of toxicity. So, from science of poisons, which was initially termed as an intoxication, toxicology and its scope has broadened and developed with time and currently has been regarded as the science of safety. And I might be right to even take it a bit forward and call it like a, in terms of medicine, as personalized therapeutic administration.
So it's not just about medicines, it's and their side effects on our body, but it's in general about I don't know, all sorts of substances and what their effect on the body is.
Yeah,
So, for
exactly.
example, okay, so for example, even things like, I don't know, water or other everyday substances, also how they impact our body.
Yeah, exactly. So imagine the kind of exposure we have with chemicals on our day to day life, be it the clothes that we are wearing, the computer that we are accessing, or the medicines that we are taking, the food we are taking. They all has a chemical in it, right? And sometimes it's not within our scope to understand the impact, both benefits and risk of all these chemicals. But sometimes it's very important if there are new chemicals, and we need to know if our system is well kind of connected with this chemical in a beneficial way. So since you talked about day-to-day chemical compounds. So let me give you some interesting and also something that your listeners will enjoy in terms of the chemicals that we use on day-to-day life. Before I start giving the example, let me tell you in what reference I will be providing the example. So to measure the acute toxicity, that means a toxic response associated with a chemical, there are different units, right? And one of the units is called LD50, which means lethal dose value. That is defined as the amount of a substance required to kill 50% of a test population. So, and it's often measured in terms of, mg per kg body weight. So right now, the examples that I'm giving, it's about a human estimation. The body weight considered in this estimation is 75 kg. So it says that acute toxicity or LD50 value of water is 6 liters. So if you drink like 6 liters of water at once, yep, it can cause
Okay.
you some side effects. The second interesting, I think, drink is coffee or caffeine that we take. So it's estimated as 118 mugs or cups, where one coffee cup is equal to approximately 240 ml. And I think the most interesting one, and we all know it, that it's not good to drink too much, is alcohol, where 13 shots are considered to be acute toxic at once, and where one shot is equal to 45 ml, where 40% absolute alcohol is concerned. So here you go.
Okay. Yeah, I knew it was bad for me, but I didn't know how much it was bad for me.
Now you know.
Okay, that's very good to know. Thanks for that. Yeah, for the statistics. So I know that you're also working in the area of computational toxicology.
Mhm.
So yeah, this was basically about, in general, about toxicology. I wonder, where does this computational aspect come in?
As we talked about, we are exposed to various chemical agents through cosmetics and medications and preserved food, environments, and many other sources. I mean, you just take it, and that resulted in severe health issues in human. And additionally, regulatory authorities from Europe and the United States of America have recognized a risk associated with this combined exposure to multiple chemicals. So it's not like one-to-one interaction, but when you are exposed to a combination of chemicals. Now imagine testing all these possible combinations of these chemicals or thousands of compounds is really impractical. It has an experimental limit, right? You can't really do it. And it's also time consuming. So that's where in silico or computational models comes into picture, and it's concerned with the development and use of computer-based models to understand and predict the interactions of biological systems with chemicals and their adverse health effects. So these interactions can be studied at population type. So we can actually measure if a certain chemical is having adverse health effect to a particular population, like a group of people, which is very like a common thing in terms of medicine. You do have adverse effects which is specific to certain genotype or phenotype, and it can be measured in terms of individual level. So what is bad for me, it's not necessarily bad for you, and that's where the concept of personalized therapy or medication comes in. And then of course as a whole, you can go and measure in cellular level and which cells it's causing toxic. It can be cytotoxic or it can be immunotoxic and so on, and molecular level. So if you go more deeper, which kind of proteins are involved, what kind of organs are involved, and so on. So depending on the questions that you have in your mind, you can zoom in and zoom out the focus. And yeah, in fact, if I have to go a more onto the contribution of computational models, I'll just take or add few more lines. Like in the past 20 years, computational models had majorly contributed to the reduction and also replacement to animal testing for cosmetics related substances. That's because in many regions across the world currently, particularly in Europe, there has been a long standing objection to the use of animals for regulatory testing of chemicals. And I think it's important. It's also from the ethical point of view. And it's currently banned for cosmetics. So there are no animal testing for, the creams that we supposed to put on our face and lotion on our body are being tested on animals anymore. So the major concern is how do we test them? Because it's also important to know if these chemicals are toxic or can cause any skin problem. Like, there are several methods, but computational methods are also providing that support.
Okay, I know, I understand. That's very interesting. So it's you use these models to kind of, yeah, I don't know, like maybe model or predict the effects of such chemicals, and also kind of model how, let's say, different chemicals might interact with each other. So let's say if I'm taking a medicine A
Mm-hmm.
and then I take another medicine, how, if there could be a sort of an adverse toxic effect or a reaction between the two.
Exactly. So, rightly said, like, a single chemical may not be toxic. It might be a very clean and it doesn't really interact with the, wrong or the right proteins in your body. But when it comes with another chemical, it has a synergistic toxic effect. So the combination is also important in terms of, predicting the adverse effect. Yes.
Okay. But does toxicology deal only with the adverse effect of a chemical, or does it deal with, in general, effects of chemicals?
So mostly, like, all the chemicals, we believe that there is some health concern, be it medicine, be it like the environmental chemical or the food chemicals, right? So now the question is, how much is too much, right? So everything should have a benefits and a risk ratio. So and the ideal combination or ideal status would be more benefits and less risk. So it's not so toxic is a very extreme word, so I would not say it's only deal with the toxicity is like, that's like where the chemicals should be banned. But knowing that how much you should take it and where you should stop might just make you better regulate the chemical and use it for the right purpose. So
True.
so it's more, it's a lot of like different thresholds that exist between toxic and non-toxic.
True. Yeah, I agree. Also, the quantity definitely matters a lot also here. Uh,
Yes.
yeah. So, and your area of research specifically within this broad field, what is that about?
So as we deal with a lot of predictive chemical toxicology, so there are like several domains of research, and if I have to like roughly divide them, it will be into four categories. And one is very important is data mining, because the good news are always available, so we always know how the chemical works and it's going to help it. But the bad news are not always available, so you need to mine the data. You need to know where you can get the experimental data, and if a compound fails in terms of toxicity testing, then it's not really accessible to the public researchers. So you need to mine the literature. You need to collaborate with the right people. And even after that, when you gain the data, because data is very important in terms of, when you want to have a model built on it. So you need to standardize the data. You need to talk to the domain expert, who's basically tell you what kind of experiments were done and if this data makes sense, and you need to standardize that. So it's really not an easy job. It requires a lot of time. It's a dirty job, and it's also the one of the most important job, if I have to say. So data mining or data integration is very important. The second part, which I can say roughly, is biological profiling, which is basically you add another level of data, which is toxicogenomics data. So you have chemogenomics or metabolomics data. And then very standard with respect to chemical toxicology is QSR model, which is basically a model which describes like quantitative structure activity relationship. So with every structure of a molecule or a chemical compound, you try to measure if that influences their activity or not, right? So you measure them in terms of a model or equation. And then a very recent, maybe 10 years, toxico chemoinformatics, which is basically dealing with toxicity data, with chemistry and informatics knowledge, which deals with chemical genomic studies. So you have the chemical and genomic data. You try to interpret that, and then you study about the chemical diversity. So how diverse this one class of chemical is. If you're talking about the ones are toxic and non-toxic, do they have like conserved behavior or they don't, right? And then chemical neighborhoods, which is interesting because it also comes from the graph theory, and and social network or social media, we do see that there is a neighborhood behavior. Yeah, you tend to like the same kind of post which your friends ends up sharing, or you have close friend. You can really predict the personality of one person by the neighborhood that the person is located or behaving with. So, and it's very similar with terms of chemical. So we try to see if the close neighbor in terms of different descriptors, that could be the structure of the chemical or the properties of the chemical, and if we see that they behave in the same way. So I think that's interesting.
Yeah, definitely. It's very interesting. Also, I find this analogy between kind of social networks and neighborhoods in graphs and how you apply them to a completely different field. I find that very interesting, I have to say.
Yeah, it's completely interdisciplinary area of research. So, and it's also very inclusive area of research. So you can come with completely different knowledge, and you can still contribute because there are different types of project. One project needs a bit more specific knowledge, like from the domain, and one project might need just completely different knowledge, which can help to even the domain experts to see things differently and more, accurately. So a lot of thinking out of the box is appreciated in this kind of research, and you're free to do a lot. And of course, you are also at the same time learn a lot because you fail a lot if you try something new. And also, I must say that it's similar. Most of these methods that I've talked about is also used for coming up new properties of in chemicals, not only toxicity, or it could be like if you're discovering a new drug or any kind of activity of a chemical, you can use these methods. They are very general in that way.
So you mentioned that this is a very interdisciplinary area of research. I wonder what kind of skills does one need to, um, yeah, move into this field?
So this field came because or existing because of rapidly evolving data resources that are coming from various levels of information or research areas such as chemistry, structural bioinformatics, and cheminformatics, metabolomics, proteomics, genomics, and also understanding their interconnections has been the foundation of this kind of predictive toxicities. In short, toxicology is a translational science, transferring knowledge from basic science into practical applications, and mainly focus on safeguarding the public health and the environment. So, from knowledge in mathematics to statistics, computer science, to chemistry, biology, even physics can contribute to the field of computational toxicity prediction. So, it's a very inclusive field, as I talked about it. And I when I started working on it, I had no idea about it. I was from the domain of cheminformatics or chemistry background, and I realized that this is an interesting field, and I just made my way to it with interesting projects. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think it's also, I can totally understand because, on the one hand, we are dealing with chemicals, and then on the other hand, there is biology because it's about the organism. And then there is also the computational aspect. So, yeah, it's really, I guess people from many different fields can work in this area.
Yes, and I think what makes me feel like this field of science is very interesting because it really connects to the day-to-day life instances. Like, you are making an impact that you can see very closely and directly, because the chemicals that you're using in your medicines or food or in the environment, and you're making yourself aware as well as the community aware of it. So that's a great motivation, I think, to work on field like this.
Yeah, yeah. No, I totally agree. It can really have a very positive impact on the lives of so many people. I mean, actually, I'm also curious about how you yourself ended up getting into this field at Charité in the first place.
So yeah, it's a long story. I'll just try to make it short.
Okay.
As I said, that it wasn't planned that I will be doing research in computational toxicology. But yeah, let's start. Like after completing my bachelor studies, I moved to Germany in the year 2010, and I ended up in the University of Bonn, where I was doing my master thesis, and I was exposed to the world of chem informatics there, and I really liked it. I loved the subject. And then I moved to Heidelberg for a short stay for 1 year for my master thesis. And eventually, as you may say, the destiny had for me. So I joined Humboldt University Computational Systems Graduate School for my PhD, and at the same time joined Charité because my supervisor, Dr. Robert Preisner, was then one of the PIs of the graduate school. And so when I was planning my PhD topic, he always like supported me to come up with independent research ideas and work on the issues that I'm passionate about. And at a very early stage of my research, I realized, or he allowed me to lead projects and explore research ideas, which now if I look back, which I might have doubted initially, because I'm an like a new person in research, and suddenly trusting all of it and having the confidence is kind of challenging. But he always supported any person who wants to think out of the box and want to do something new. So computational toxicology wasn't the main focus of our group initially, but during my PhD research, it kind of gained more interest and focus. And sooner we realized that if we want to discover good, safe drugs, medicine, chemicals, we cannot ignore the risk associated with it. So they are basically two sides of the same coin. So, ideally inversely proportional to each other. That means a good chemical should always have benefits more and less risk. And if you don't study the risk, you don't know how good it is. So, yeah, that's how I ended up working on this field.
And now you're working at Charité. I mean, Charité is famous, at least in Europe, it's really famous. I think it's one of the biggest university hospitals, if I'm not wrong.
Mhm.
Yeah, how is your experience of working there?
Yeah, so my experience has been really positive, and that's the reason I stayed there even after my PhD. So I saw a great freedom while I wanted to explore different ideas. I think it's very important for any science lover that you have the freedom to work and things that you connect with, and also the support in the best sense that I have asked for from our institute director to my immediate supervisor. So it's been very supportive environment. So many of this project actually involved a substantial amount of collaboration, both with other researchers within the institute and at international level. So along with students and the clinicians, and all of this experience placed me in a position that or to successfully do my research and contribute further into this area. So I must say that working with clinicians is a very important step to understand the risk and benefit profiles of drugs. And I think the best advantage of working in a clinical setting is that you are in close contact with the clinical experts and on a day-to-day basis, and you are aware of the reality of the situation. So you're not just publishing blindly and working and being in a world that is not has an immediate connection with the people who are going to probably be benefited with your research. It's like when it comes to patient-centered drug discovery, you see a real world evidence right in front of your eyes, right? So so you connect your research and motivate yourself, and how you can make a difference in everyday's people's life. And and to be honest, it's not always the big discovery or loud successful moments. We do have that, but it's not always that, which seems to be like the big thing in science, but also small significant confirmation and confidence that your work matters. and there can be a visible direct connection to the patient's or clinical needs. And that also depending on the project. So, and it's not, of course, not with all the projects you get that kind of opportunity, but most of the time you do get that. Recently, which has been the COVID-19 experience, and we had amazing time working with different clinicians, because they help us to see things and also keep us humble. Because I remember, and I think it's interesting for the listeners, we were working on drugs and we wanted to find out, of course, the cure like everyone else, and we were trying to tell them how good our drug is, and the clinicians always tell us, for us, no drug is good as long as it's not saving lives. I think that's very important, and getting that kind of answer can make you feel like, okay, that's true.
And so, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people would be hearing this and also would be wondering if you have any suggestions for them in case they are looking to do research at Charité.
I will start with some general specification, because if they're planning to do a PhD, of course, a supervisor is essential. Um, it's a crucial step, right? So please look into their academic profile and their publications, and their past supervising experiments. If possible, get in touch with their older students. If they're new supervisors, then be open for a chat and talk to them, try to know them. It's absolutely fine. Your supervisor is equally concerned of hiring a new person as you are concerned to be with a new mentor, right? So
Yeah.
so it's a both way thing. And now because I'm closer to the supervisor, or I'm supervising, I can tell you very honestly that it's not only the students who are nervous, we are too, because we also want to give the best experience. And you don't necessarily need a famed scholar who may not give you enough time and attention if you're the one who needs close supervision, of course. And so choose wisely, and working in an interdisciplinary area like the toxicity related research also increases your employability factor outside academia post PhD. So not everyone who does a PhD wants to be in the academic setting, and I think it's healthy to keep that option open. And especially if you're not very passionate about staying in academia, it's okay, right? So that's one point. And I think it's a very repetitive word, passion and commitment. I have heard
Yeah.
that so many times, and I always felt like, why? But today I can tell you it's so important. While supervising students, I really understand that this is an important factor. We don't have any measure for that. So when I'm interviewing people, I don't know that. I can't measure that. IQ, of course, one can measure or can estimate sometime. So, but passion takes you further. It can make you be very curious about your work, and it's important to have that for your subject. So it does not mean that you need to be or in a place where you enjoy the pain. No, obviously not. But you should be able to see the silver lining that lies ahead. So keeping that positive thing, and PhD is very challenging in that sense. So these are the plus points, and working at a medical institute like Charité also allows you to experience teaching at the university level. I think that's very important. It helps you to communicate your science at a very early age to diverse audience. That's in this case would have been student from medical, informatics, data science, and bioinformatics. In my case, I was appointed as a teaching assistant on like from the first year of my PhD. I did not appreciate it that point because I felt like it added pressure. But today, I think it really helped me to understand my subject much better. So bad news if you don't like teaching, but yeah, you can always say no, but just don't do it because you have to do it. Otherwise, it's bad for you and as well as the students. So and rightly said, by learning you teach, and by teaching you learn.
And so, also for people who are looking to do research in the field of toxicology, perhaps you could give some advice about major trends or topics of research that they should consider.
So as I've already said, like many times, computational toxicology is a broad area of research, And it includes many exciting topics. And there is an excellent focus right now on safer chemicals and green chemistry, and especially because of the new EU, Green Deal that came into focus. So risk assessment methods are very important for regulatory testing. So, chemicals, there's always new chemicals coming up in the market, and you need to know how to test them. So this is an interesting field. And we talk about drug interactions, and it's very important because many people after a certain age goes for multiple therapy. Like, you can have a lot of comorbidities like diabetic, heart problems, and you're taking multiple medicines at the same time, and the combination of this medicine has to be understood, whether they are beneficial or they are not beneficial for you. So this clinical relevant drug interaction is an interesting study which involves a lot of other interesting questions in it. So drug food interactions, so basically if you're taking a drug and you're taking some food right after or before it, then the chemicals in the food can cause side effects because in interacting with the drug. So you need this is a very great important area of focus currently. So one can also study about that. Food allergy is another important point. In Europe, we see a lot of people, also rest of the world, there is a nut allergy. I'm associated with clinical research unit at Charité, where we are trying to address biomarkers which are involved for food allergy in terms of nuts. And especially with babies, how do they develop after their birth? And some people don't have it, some have it, and what makes those people who have it? What are the specific genes that are involved, and so on? Talking about toxicity predictions at Charité, we developed some platforms we called Protox, and it contains around 50 toxicity prediction models, and they're based on machine learning algorithms. So you can do a lot AI-based research or predictive methods in this field. And to name a few, these are the research interests. And who knows, once you start and you come up with a new topic and and make a new domain of research. Yeah.
Now, this sounds very interesting, actually, and particularly what I like is that it has a real impact on people's lives. And of course, it's such an interdisciplinary area that's also very, very interesting. Yeah, thank you very much for sharing your knowledge and experience on this topic with us, Priyanka.
Yeah, thank you, Paras. I very much appreciated the opportunity to share a few thoughts that I could and that could be helpful for your listeners. And thank you for inviting me. I'm honored. And yeah.
Thank you very much. That's all, folks. Remember to subscribe to our podcast and check out our blog on indiatogermany.com. See you in the next episode.